Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Dr. Afolasade Fakolade to the Sankaset stage, and her talk is When the Shoe Pinches.
There are only 4 kinds of people in this world. Those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. Former US First Lady Rosalynn Carter made this statement in 2011. And even though it's been more than a decade now, this statement continues to be pretty accurate in many regions of the world. If we take Canada, for instance, we currently have about 8 million people, over 20% of our population, who provide unpaid care for a family member or a close friend with aging-related needs, a chronic disease like multiple sclerosis, or a disability. I am 99.9% sure that I would never get to become a US First Lady, thanks to my husband who's sitting somewhere in the audience today. But I do know one thing. Mrs. Carter and I have something in common. We share a deep interest in the issue of family caregiver well-being. My own interest in family caregiving began in 2009. My mother was diagnosed with a serious medical condition on April 9th, just 2 days before her 52nd birthday. And I remember sitting with her in the doctor's office, feeling shock and fear wash all over me when we received this diagnosis, and wondering how are we going to cope as a family. I became my mother's primary caregiver with a somewhat naive expectation that as a recently graduated physiotherapist, my background and my knowledge base made me suitable for the role. But I was so wrong. Nothing in my professional training as a physiotherapist had prepared me for the burden of being a family caregiver, or its subsequent impact on my own physical, psychological, and even economic well-being. My mother is now doing well, but my experiences of struggling as a family caregiver continue to influence my research here at Queen's, which focuses on promoting family caregiver well-being. Did you know that there are 5 professions that are considered heroic today? And these professions are considered heroic because they involve saving someone's life, risking your own life, standing up for others, or sacrificing free time for no extra pay. I bet you all can guess what these professions are. And yes, you were absolutely right if you thought military personnel, police officers, firefighters, doctors, and nurses. Family caregivers don't make this list, even though they demonstrate all the heroic qualities and are very well the pillars of health and social care. Family caregivers are unsung heroes. And I'm here tonight to talk about these unsung heroes who made tremendous sacrifices to provide care for their loved ones. And I'm going to share with you very simple things that we've discovered as critical for caregiver well-being. My research team and I here at Queen's focus on caregivers of people with multiple sclerosis, MS. MS is a chronic neurological condition that affects close to 100,000 Canadians and 2.8 million people globally. People with this disease can have a wide array of physical, psychological, and cognitive symptoms that can limit their ability to fully engage in everyday activities. We know that services like personal support or home care or other types of home care services are incredibly helpful. But the sad reality is that there's just a limited number of hours available. And so 80 to 90% of the care that people with MS need is provided within the home by their family and friends. Family caregivers of people with MS, like all family caregivers, display extraordinary courage in responding to the call to provide ongoing support and care for their loved ones. But unlike other caregivers, those who provide care for people with MS start much earlier, as this disease is typically diagnosed in young adulthood. Women are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with MS than men. And this means that MS caregivers are often men providing care for their spouses with the disease. The MS caregiving role can last an entire lifetime. Some caregivers provide care for more than 5 decades. And what this means is that caregivers and their care recipients are together navigating major life milestones like parenthood, like career building, while managing this disease. Family caregivers, whether in the general population or in MS, don't get nearly as much recognition or support as they deserve. And when we do talk about family caregiving, we always talk about the negatives. We talk about high levels of fatigue, anxiety, and depression. We talk about high levels of caregiver burden, social isolation, and poor quality of life as outcomes of caregiving. Tonight, I ask you to imagine an alternate reality. Imagine a reality where caregiving is associated with positive outcomes. Imagine a reality where caregivers experience feelings of pride, personal growth, and strengthened family relationships, all because of their caregiving. Imagine a reality where caregivers have good quality of life and see caregiving as a rewarding and satisfying experience. I believe that this reality is achievable, that good can come out of caregiving. That's right, good can come out of caregiving. And so over the last 3 years, my research team and I have asked over 500 caregivers of people with MS living in Canada to complete yearly surveys to determine how they maintain their well-being. And as part of this research, we've also interviewed caregivers, asking them to share their experiences of caregiving and wellness. Their stories highlight areas where these caregivers, these unsung heroes, are struggling. Or as one caregiver puts it, where the shoe pinches. But most importantly, their stories show the positive aspects of caregiving and what can be done to ensure that these positive experiences become a reality for all caregivers. I'd like to share some of their stories with you tonight, starting with the story of Tim. Tim is a husband who provides care for his wife, Dawn. Dawn has secondary progressive MS. She spends most of her time in a wheelchair, and she has limited use of her hands. I'm sure we can all imagine how incredibly difficult simple tasks like feeding can be. Tim described caregiving as a 24-hour-a-day job. A job that doesn't end at the weekend or stop for holidays somewhere warm and sunny. A job that involves continuous grieving and coping with multiple connected losses from the past, present, and future. The loss of Dawn's function and the loss of his dream of having a partner that could support him in life was some of his examples. In spite of all this, Tim had positive aspects of caregiving to share. He described caregiving as bringing him closer to Dawn, strengthening their relationships. He's also developed a deeper appreciation for life because of his caregiving. Our second participant, Nancy, started providing care for her mother, Becca, about 3 years ago when her dad passed away. Becca has relapsing remitting MS, and she experiences periods where her symptoms suddenly flare up, leaving her with worse function than before. Becca and Nancy now live together. And like Tim, Nancy has also experienced positive outcomes since becoming a caregiver. She described caregiving as providing her opportunities for personal growth, citing examples such as increased patience and an increased ability and inner strength to take on and overcome any of life's challenges. Our third participant, Dana, provides care for her husband, Scott, who also has relapsing remitting MS. And Dana shared that about 10 days before their wedding, Scott suffered a relapse. He had to be in a wheelchair for the entire ceremony because his legs were too weak to walk. Dana and Scott have now been married 10 years, and she knows that his MS will likely progress and that things will become even more challenging in the future. Yet, she's also coping well and experiencing satisfaction in her caregiving role. Caregiving has taught her important life skills like problem solving. And she also shared that she now has an increased sense of self-confidence and self-worth because of her caregiving. All of these stories have a unifying theme. They show that it is possible to have positive experiences as a caregiver. And you might be wondering how. Well, I'm going to share with you tonight 4 very, very simple tools that my research team and I have discovered as critical for bringing forth these positive experiences of caregiving. And I want to encourage you to think about these tools as prescription for caregiver well-being. Number 1, quality physical activity. Dana shared how she and Scott have devised various creative ways to exercise together, both within their home and in the community. And she described physical activity as just the thing that works for her well-being, helping her so that she doesn't require any medication for anxiety or depression. Number 2, support services that are rooted in the community. Tim described how this was important in helping shape and change his perspective on caregiving. A mindfulness program for caregivers located in his local community center had taught him the importance of empathy and self-compassion when approaching his caregiving role. Number 3, multiple support networks that can be enlisted for caregiving. Nancy attributed her success as a caregiver to team effort, including support from natural sources like friends, family, co-workers, and her church community. And she described these additional sources of support as critical for sustaining her well-being. Number 4, toolkits that have information about the disease and what to expect as a caregiver. Nancy believed that such toolkits helped to reduce the uncertainty, the fear, the anxiety associated with caregiving, helping her to come to terms with the situation and then make plans for the future. It really breaks my heart that the positive experiences shared by Tim, Nancy, and Dana are not the norm for all caregivers. Many caregivers continue to struggle, just like I did 13 years ago when I was a caregiver. And for these caregivers, the shoe continues to pinch. So what can we do to ensure that we change the reality for these caregivers? A staggering number of our participants told us that health and social care systems need to rethink the way that we offer support to families affected by MS. As a society, we wouldn't expect someone to become a military personnel, a police officer, a firefighter, a doctor, or a nurse without adequate training and support. Yet, this is what we expect of caregivers. We think that it's okay for them to assume this role without adequate preparation, without access to the tools that they need to succeed, and without knowing how to be well. Our society must develop capacity to do better. We can do better. As healthcare providers and researchers, we must recognize that the well-being of care recipients is highly related to the well-being of their caregivers. We must recognize that caregivers are equally as worthy of care as their care recipients. I'll say that one more time. Caregivers are as worthy of care as their care recipients. Our health and social care systems must develop capacity to assess and monitor caregiver well-being so that we can intervene quickly before crisis situations emerge. I know that it will take significant investments to ensure that such systems are available and accessible to caregivers nationwide. And so it seems to me, friends, that we're at a crossroads. We can either choose to ignore the voices of these unsung heroes, and in so doing, contribute to the anguish from which their voices arise. Or we can choose to take action to ensure that positive aspects of caregiving become a reality for all caregivers. I urge us to choose the latter. If we take no action, the consequences for care recipients will include increased hospitalizations, earlier entry into nursing homes. If we take no action, the consequences for caregivers will include declining health and poor quality of life. Some will even die sooner because of the responsibilities they have shouldered to provide care for their loved ones. If you've ever thought that our healthcare system is struggling now, then imagine what will happen if we lost the services provided by family caregivers. I know that I may need to provide care for my mother again in the future, particularly as she gets older. And my dream, my desire, is that when that time comes, our society, our healthcare systems, our social care systems have evolved to better support family caregivers. I hope that my experiences of caregiving will be different from what they were 13 years ago. Our shared humanity compels us to act collectively now to ensure a reality where the caregiving shoe does not pinch as much. A reality where caregivers are not only coping, but are thriving in their caregiving role. Thank you.